I'm really excited to be here today, I've got to say, and it's been fascinating to hear what's been going on. Some of my friends I've heard before, and it's great to hear the message. And I'm so glad we got those videos up, because I think hearing actually from the kids that have been involved in the program is super important. My background actually comes from camping. It goes way back before I started my career in camping. I started out as a kid in camp. My dad was in the army, so he dragged me around everywhere. We were talking at the start, what a wonderful introduction to the day where we got to share and hear about what others in the room were doing. And, you know, I've kind of reflected on my involvement with the outdoors, which basically started from the beginning. And I think we take a lot for granted as we grow older of the things we've done, and we will talk later of, you know, where we hear about certainly people from my generation which talk about the good old days. They weren't that good if we really think about it. And you know, I recall, and I've got many friends that, you know, never made it to experience life because of the good old days. So we do have to recognise that risk is also a real thing. We have actually come a long way in making sure that people can think through those things, because we have learned from the things of the past. But I think it's great now that we're recognising too that we can go too far at times. Now, before I do get started and about what's going on, I do need to apologise. The screen, I just drove back to the slide that you showed before. In my wife's defence, when she went on that 3-week holiday, she did actually suggest that I was supposed to be looking after the kids. I actually thought that the kids would look after me, so it was a misunderstanding, but it's not her fault. All right, I just want to get that clear from the beginning. I feel in a way that I'm in a room full of very clever people involved with risk. It's great. You guys are smart enough to take risks. I come from a generation where we were dumb enough to take risks. So, you know, we've got to, you know, I think it's really good that we are having these conversations and they are being data-driven. I've been asked to come today to speak about the insurance industry's approach to developmental risk. I can tell you right now, they don't have one. They don't have an approach to developmental risk. They don't have an approach to most things other than their business. Insurers very seldom have conscience. Now, I happen to be insurance because I spent a lifetime working with young people, and I felt that it was, I was blessed with the opportunity of being able to take young people on that experiential learning thing. I didn't know all those words, by the way. I just worked with kids and helped them get outdoors. Majority of times they were city kids that were getting a country experience, which was wonderful. And I think this is exciting that we're actually recognising specifically about trying to work in an urban environment, because urban environments have changed significantly. There was green space in every urban environment that I ever had to live in. I actually used to, one of my first homes that I can recall is actually not far from here. Dad was the barracks commander of the Victoria Barracks, and you know, there was a lot of green space around where that was. Now that now is a major sporting precinct and you know, a very different environment. But that was the first sort of conscious experience that I had, that it took a village to raise a child. I had 114 men and some women that told me what to do every day of the week. And that was the environment of which I grew up in, and I hope that I brought my children up in, where, you know, we were living in community, we worked with community, and there was times where our kids would wander around. I have 3 children and 8 grandchildren. And all of those love the outdoors and experience the outdoors, but they have had very different experiences than what I've had. So if we're trying to transfer that statement there of the insurance industry's approach to developmental risk, I think it's really important that we understand that that is not on their agenda. So we'll flick through a few slides just simply to give you a bit of a picture of the discussions that have been had over the last little while. And we've been asking a lot of questions of insurance in the outdoor industry. And as we've been talking through that in various forums all over the country, these are the sort of 3 things that we've been focusing on. You know, what's occurred in the past, what's happening now, and what will it look like in the future? And we've got to start to learn to communicate different things. We'll flick through these ones really quickly. Just so as you understand the insurance environment, that this is what the insurance cycle is looking like. And what we've got to recognise in the outdoor industry is there have been dozens of insurers that have been leaving the market over the last 20 years. I got pulled into insurance when they said, we need someone to be the conduit between the underwriter and reality. Now, as I said, I'm in a room full of smart people who are involved in risks. I didn't do very well at school. My best subject was playtime, and I was very good at it, all right? So it was interesting when I got pulled in 21 years ago when the HIH collapsed and insurers were pulling out of markets where they wanted to go, and they said, we need someone practical to go. Now, I sat down with insurers, the underwriters. First time I'd seen the Sydney Harbour Bridge, I was sitting on a big office building, I don't know how many thousands of floors up, looking down. Scenery's magnificent. We are so blessed with the beauty of this country. Looking down at the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House over in the corner. And so the first thing I said to the underwriters was, okay, so how do you rate premiums? How do you actually work this out? They couldn't answer me. There was no risk focus on whatever that was. So I actually walked them through, and we were using horse riding as the primary activity because that was the area of my expertise at the time. And we started to actually I mapped out a 2-hour program with a beginner horse ride. And we looked at the spikes of risk when people are first involved in an activity, how we introduce the activity, looking at the peripheral risks that exist in those areas. And the insurers were sitting there, and these are the reinsurers, and these are the guys and the underwriters that are sitting there, and they're working through this, and they're trying to then reflect on their own practical applications of what they'd seen and done. But I was super surprised that in the room full of very clever people that had been, they had never actually been mapped through the activities that they'd insured. I don't think we realise how great our industry is and how little everyone else knows about it. Insurers are not completely ignorant of it now. They're learning something, but typically they learn too late. So they learn on that claim cycle. This claim cycle of the hard market, the soft market, basically is this cycle that we live in. It used to go for about 23 years, it then went to about 17 years. Now it's working every 2 or 3 years. So I think we need to realise that those cycles of insurance, and we are being dictated to by insurers rather than us, having insurers empower us to get our job done. Okay, so in my view, and that's all that you're getting. This is something that we really have to learn to come to deal with. And it's good to see that we've got a risk right there that the hackers are going. If they want my presentation, they're welcome to it, because I just put this together because everyone else did a PowerPoint and I felt really guilty, so I stood at the back and made one up really quick, so then I looked smart as well. So if we flick to the next one, just again very quickly, these are the sorts of problems that the industry have encountered and they've identified, and they're saying insurers are pulling out, they're preempting staff challenges, there's inconsistency in the process, limited benchmarks, recommended guidelines that were not commonly known. The amount of people in the industry that had no awareness of what the adventure activity standards were, for example, is mind-blowing. And I think the other part was to, the commercial decisions based by insurers we didn't have any understanding about. Going to the next one, then we looked at a few solutions, and these were the sorts of things that they picked up on. But this piece of working, educating, insurers on what we do is really, really important. I think you have to understand the insurance background, so therefore working with experienced and specialist brokers who understand the business. And this was hit home to me. We were talking about this morning with someone from the caravan park industry. They said, would you sell your caravan park through a normal real estate agent? And everyone said, well, of course not. They've got no idea. You go to a specialist. Well, insurance is actually more relevant in that environment. So getting a broker that actually understands you is super important, because you must go through a broker to get to insure in this country. That is how it works. So they are there to advise you, they're there to navigate through it. But if they don't have a specialist identity in that area, they could go through, and I can go into great detail about open market placements versus binders, but ultimately the premium pool in this field is not big enough to sustain a catastrophic loss. So we've got to understand that we need to understand the insurer's process in order to be able to really mitigate the risk that they have. So moving on from there, and we can touch on that, I was asked then, so what is the insurance industry's development or approach to developmental risk? And as I said before, I'm not sure where it is. So just onto that, what is our expectation of insurers? And the reason I raise this is, I think we have to understand we should be saying to them, this is what we want, this is how we operate, this is what we do. I love your approach, and don't ever apologise to insurers. I'm not one, so it's okay. But we should be saying to them what's going on. Now, you've got to also understand that insurers are driven by actuaries, and actuaries love data. What is super exciting today is we're starting to see that there is data that's coming up. It's becoming, there is now data that's, that is recent and that can actually be tested. We're starting to get this stuff. So don't underestimate the power of that data. And when I say that, that goes right down to the basic things. When I talk to often people who are in this space and they're coming on as a new client into our business, what frightens me is that they'll often say to me, I've never been asked that question before. And excuse me, but then how the hell did you get insurance? If the insurer doesn't know what you're doing and how often you're doing it and what risks are involved and what mitigation strategies you've got in place, the level of expertise your staff have, what standards are involved in that environment and what's being done with it, then how can they do this? And the biggest criticism of insurance is that it's too dear. Well, I will argue it has been too cheap, and that is what the problem is for our industry. We have been way too long not addressing the real issues, and we've been shopping. Yet when people come to us, we expect them to recognise the quality of the services that we deliver. So we've just got to start to really think, in genuine terms as to what it is we're asking. And, sometimes that little cheap deal on eBay that looks too good to be true, it always turns out that it is too good to be true. Maybe that same thing exists in the insurance markets and we should actually be doing it. Very few operators take into account or budget for insurance up until recently, where they're complaining of the huge spikes. And yet those spikes only exist because insurers are taking large losses or we're being shopped into a new market, and they buy in that hard market cycle because, premiums are high, they cash in on it, and then they drop out of the market. And most insurers. How many people realise that they have probably over the last 10 years been insured by probably 5, 6, 7, 8 or even 10 insurers? Been with the one broker maybe, but 10 insurers. And so, trying to look at specialist areas where there's investment into the industry, because an insurer, they're a financial company, they're an investment company, they're looking for, they also are there, primarily they're there for profit. And so looking at investment. So we've got clients in my instance, I've got clients who have been with the same insurer for 17 years. So therefore, when they take a hit, it's not just that individual business that's taking the hit, it's that premium pool that's been collected over that time, much more sustainable. But we don't look at that. Now, my pricing in those insurers, I'm not trying to do an advertisement for my company, so please don't get that wrong, because there are others that do it just as well. But what I'm saying is, if we don't have a sustainable view of insurance, then we get what we deserve. Okay, and so we need to be conscious of that in the way that we're talking. If you want to hit the next button, because I can't remember what was on. Rather than looking to the insurer for what the plan is, what is our plan? What is it that we want to achieve? And how does insurance... I would expect insurance should be your major partner. How many people have a broker? There, yep. How many people talk to that broker, more than once a year? Okay, so there's a couple. Oh, I wish you didn't too, by the way. Don't look. It's obvious who it is. You should have a relationship with those people. You're going to hear from Tony in a minute, coming from the work cover space. If the people that he talks to once will typically be the people that you have to go to them because they're in a situation where something's gone wrong and you're having to, then have to go through the painful prosecution piece. rather than the people that communicate on a regular basis saying these are the issues and looking at the educational aspect of what work cover can provide. Your liability insurer, your property owner insurance, all of that is the same thing. Communicate with them, let them be a business partner with you. And that's why they need to actually know your space. That's why that expertise is there. I don't send my kids off to, well, I do send my kids off to anywhere. I should think of another one. Someone normally doesn't send their kids off to if you're going to send a kid to a swimming instructor, a swimming lesson, you expect that person to be a swimming instructor, to have knowledge and the safety systems built in around it. You should also be looking for that when you're looking for your business partners and going around. So what I guess I'm saying is, rather than the insurance industry approach to developmental risk, we need to start educating insurers about what we're learning about today. It's going to be hard to get them in this room because they're not as passionate about it as we are. They're not as passionate about the outcomes as we are because they are passionate about the financial aspects of their business, all right? Which we say doesn't matter to us, but yet when it comes to getting our insurance bill, suddenly it does. So we'll hit on to the next one. Their view, claims versus premium. This is how insurers think. We've got premium pool, these are the claims. And I hate to tell you, but in the outdoor recreational space, which starts to get lumped into a whole lot of things, the reason we're in a situation that we're in right now is because claims have far exceeded the premium pool that's come in. They have costs and everything associated with running their business as well, so it's not all the money there and all the money in, but it's working out. At one stage there it was $1.20 going out for every dollar coming in. Okay, hands up who thinks that's a good investment. I was about to say the same people put their hands up again, but David was listening this time, that's good. All right, so we have got to recognise that that's it. But we're not only that now, we also have now a reputation for that. So we actually have ground to make up in insurers' minds. Okay, so we need to be conscious of that. This is their language, and which is so exciting for me. Our view is we're looking at the risk versus the rewards. That's the mindset. So we need to educate insurers as to that piece that they play in being able to provide the rewards. I think the conversations being had about self-esteem, mental health, physical well-being, because all of that is costing society significantly. Yeah, it is, and we know that, but we're now getting the data to demonstrate that. That is magnificent. That is really good, because then we can actually have real conversations with real people. I can only give you anecdotal evidence, but what I can tell you is, this, that from an outsider's perspective of Australia looking in, it is the most dangerous place in the world. Everywhere you go, there's a spider, a snake, or a parkour instructor. All right? There is a whole lot of dangers in here. We're either on fire or underwater. Okay? If you go in the water, there's sharks or crocodiles. And if that's not the case, you've got to wear a suit because the stingers will get you. Then they discover that those are jellyfish. Then there's a whole other conversation. So the perspective of outsiders for Australia looking in is it's a dangerous place. Now let's flip that and start talking about insurers' perspective of Australia. We have one of the highest rates of litigation. All right, we have the highest limits of liability. Highest limits of liability across the globe. So we've got all of these issues that are putting pressure on. So insurers actually see Australia as one of the places where in their perception, they use the term bubble wrap. They see Australians as not the adventuresome larrikins that we perceive ourselves as. Externally, we're seen as the country on the other side of the world that bubble wraps not only their children but their adults as well. And we compare ourselves. I often hear this, that getting as litigious as the US. You're kidding. There's states in the US where you can't sue. We are a very litigious society here, and insurers are very, very conscious of that. So we need to actually understand those situations when we're thinking of how insurers are going. The local markets here are not interested in a lot of the risk and exposures that we've got here, because they're local markets and they're Australians and they know what's going on. The overseas insurers that are investing and prepared to invest in here have often come in not realise the exposure, and by the time the claims start filtering through, it's time to exit. So does that give you a bit of a perspective of what we are showing out to the outside world? We need to flip that. They need to be having the conversations that you guys have been having in here today, to see the research that's being done, to see the outcomes that are being delivered. And we need to actually start looking at that stuff and start recognising, some of those statistics were terrifying. When we think, no wonder our children aren't allowed out the door, outside. So we've got to start to actually use that data to demonstrate the benefits of what we and our industry provide. I think that's super important. I don't know what's next, so we'll just flick onto it just to see, just in case. Oh, well, that's good. It means I've finished. Because I'll get into trouble from all that has pretty coloured hair, so I can't get so upset. So does that give you a bit of a profile of where insurance is coming from? I think we've got to flip the conversation. I think we've got to stop looking down on insurance and saying why. We've just got to start telling them what, how and when. We've got to start driving those conversations, and you need to be doing that in an educated way. You need to understand their language, so use a specialist broker. That's the first piece of advice I have to give people in this industry, because all too often it's been driven by people who don't understand, and therefore your story is not being told. All right? You need to tell your story. And if it's that quick and that simple and that easy, then start asking the questions you ask of everything else. If it's that quick, that simple and that easy, maybe there's something missing. If we're looking for something that's going to be sustainable, we talk of sustainability in every other aspect of our business, but this area of our business we don't. So if we want to have, insurers have an approach to developmental risk, we need to make sure that our community has an understanding of the benefits of this developmental risk that we've been talking about now. We need this conversation to get broader, and we need to be able to present it to our insurers as well. And again, I'll just summarise in as such as that we want to be telling them, we want insurers to insure what we do, not we want to do what they insure. Thanks very much, Phil.